Today is May 28th, 2013. We are at the DAV Club in Effingham, Illinois, and I am interviewing Milton Elefson. Elefson. Mr. Elefson was born November 13th, 1931. His service dates are August 25th, 1952 till September 10th, 1972. He retired. Mr. Elefson, can you state, my name is Cheryl Walker and I'm with the Illinois State Library, and could you state for the record what your highest rank was?
Chief Hospital Corpsman, E7.
And where you were enlisted into the service?
Yes.
And can you tell us about your history with the service?
I went in the Navy boot camp in Great Lakes, Illinois in August of 1952. Was there until boot camp until November. At that time, I went through the Naval Hospital Corps School, also at Great Lakes. And for 20 weeks, getting out in spring of 1953, and was assigned to the Naval Hospital at Great Lakes for 6 months, more or less on the job training as a hospital corpsman. From there, I was transferred to main side at Great Lakes, the dispensary on main side for about 2 years, and then went to Bethesda, Maryland, to our optical school, where I learned to make glasses and repair, fabricate, take it from the rust piece of glass to the finished product. From there, I was assigned to an optical unit in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. At that time, it was territory of Hawaii, and was there for 3 years, completing my duty there at Pearl Harbor, the 14th Naval District Optical Unit, completing it in 1958, and from there I went to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, Naval Hospital, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I served in the optical unit at the Naval Hospital in Camp Lejeune. In order to get away from the Marines, I put in for submarine school and went to sub school in November of 1960. And was there at sub school for about 7 months. Basically, submarine medicine school is a 20-week course, and making you eligible for independent duty aboard submarines. By independent duty, we're independent of any other medical facility. You were it. As a hospital corpsman, you had major responsibility for the officers and men aboard the ship that you were assigned to as independent duty hospital corpsman. Upon completion of the 20 weeks hospital submarine school, went to basic submarine school for 6 weeks, and during that basic submarine school, you went through aboard submarines, and the local operated one day locally on each submarine, operated one day and then a week or two later, you'd go aboard another submarine and learning the basic underway procedures for a submarine. So after completing of the sub school and submarine medicine school, was assigned to the USS Bonefish, which at that time was home port in San Diego. Spent 5.5 years aboard Bonefish, SS 582. It was quite an experience having a complete medical responsibility for all the men and officers on board. And Bonefish went to Japan, Naval Hospital, Japan for a year, and from the Naval Hospital, Japan, Yokosuka, Japan, went to Naval Air Station in Whidbey Island, Washington, where he served as the survival school, training personnel how to take care of themselves in the field, and how to evasion and survival school, and was there until August of 1969, where I picked up the Blueback. Blueback was a sister ship of Bonefish. There are 3 submarines in that class, a Barbell class submarine, and Barbell, Blueback, and Bonefish. They call them the 3 big girls. And the big girls have formed a Big Girl Reunion Association. And every 2 years we have a reunion of anybody that had ever served on the big girls, Barbell, Blueback, and Bonefish. I recently attended the last reunion in the 1st of May in 1913 in Charleston, South Carolina. We have the reunion every 2 years, and every year we alternate reunions, one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast, or Midwest, and then one on the East Coast. So this one was held in Charleston, South Carolina, which is the East Coast. It was voted on at that time to have the next one on the West Coast in Portland, Oregon. The only ones that have been held in Washington or been on the West Coast have been held in Portland. When the Navy retired Blueback, when she was no longer able to perform her duties satisfactorily according to the Navy, the city of Portland and the state of Oregon bought Blueback, moved it to Portland, and it is now part of Museum Science and Industry for the state of Oregon. And she's permanently tied up. She's still afloat. They cut a hole inside of her to make her handicap accessible, so anybody and everybody can go and visit the Blueback. If you're ever in Portland, Oregon, go see Blueback. And I retired off of Blueback as my last ship, my last duty station was from Blueback, retired in about the 25th of, left Blueback about the 28th of August. Took a cruise liner, USS Mariposa, from Pearl Harbor or Honolulu to San Francisco. Well, that was my retirement cruise. It was a pleasure cruise from Hawaii back to San Diego stateside. quite a way to end a career. Coming back down a luxury liner.
When you were the sole person providing medical on the submarine,
Yes,
there were no other medical personnel.
no,
So if someone needed surgery, an emergency surgery, you would have to provide that?
well, during World War II, there were some incidents that happened next to me, but that was before the days of the helicopters. Before at that time, it was they were probably in a war zone where they could not break radio silence to get advanced medical treatment. With the flight evacuation system that we have today and the communications that we have today, they're probably even better now than they were when I was in, because of the satellite and everything. There's almost instantaneous response to anybody's call for help. At that time, we did have one emergency when we were operating on a special operation. Some of it is still classified, but it did in what area we were located at. I did have a serious leg injury, almost a complete amputation of the lower leg of one of my crew members, and we could not break radio silence because the operating area we're in for about 36 hours. And you seem on the snorkeling, snorkel depth about 55 feet. We were faster submerged than we were on the surface because of our hull design. We had the albacore or teardrop shaped hull, same as the nuclear power boats. And we were faster submerged than we were on surface, so we stayed at snorkel depth of 65 feet and had an addition of the 3 diesels, full power. The old man and the skipper put it also on a 500 amp battery boost, so it gives 3 or 4 more knots faster, 3 or 4 knots faster, and steamed for about 36 hours before we could break radio silence. And we're met in the port. The closest, it was probably about another 24 hours after we broke the radio silence that we finally offloaded the patient for further medical evacuation for more definite treatment.
When you were on the submarine, how long of a span would you be on the sub?
Longest I was down was 65 days. We would snorkel at night and be submerged on the battery during the daytime. Most of our operations were where the sunlight was limited, or nighttime was limited, because when we were operating was pretty close to the Arctic Circle, and your days and nights are almost the same. You'd be in that location, you're land of the midnight sun almost. You'd have taps, which is supposed to be your sign to go to bed. and sometimes at 11:30, 12 o'clock at night.
How did, how many men were on these?
We had 80 men and 8 officers in the space, walking space. We were one of the shorter submarines. You know, everybody thinks submarine, long, skinny boat. We were short and fat. We had about a 220-foot total length. That was from the very front of the ship until the very back of the screw, the rear propeller. We had a single giant propeller, and out of that 220 feet, you have about 20 feet coming out for your torpedo tubes up forward, and then because of the teardrop hull design going back to the small rear or half section of the ship, about 20 foot of the back section was your shaft going back to your propeller, going from your main motor back to your propeller. So that took up about another 20 feet. And so you're now talking about 180 feet of walking space. Of course, all your machinery, all your diesel engines, all your torpedo storage, all your has to be taken out of that 180 feet. Your berthing spaces. So I say you're talking about 180 or about walking space, because your bunks, your berthing space is taking up space, both for the enlisted and officers. You're talking walking room of about three bedroom house for 80 men and 8 officers. About the same equivalent as square footage wise as a 3-bedroom house.
So tight quarters.
Yes.
How many on your bunks? How many high?
We were three bunks, one almost on the deck level, one in the middle, and then one up above. There was about 36 inches between each bunk. Then your clothes rack, your clothes locker was probably about 6 inches deep by about 6 foot long and about 36 inches wide. And you had to put your entire sea bag in that space. So you learn from other shipmates and your own experience that you don't fold your clothes and put them in there, because each fold takes up space. You lay everything out flat, and then you put more clothes on top of that. And speaking of berthing, the barbell class submarines were designed originally as a missile controlled radar ship. They had a high powered radar to control the missiles, and by the time they got completed, the radar missiles were obsolete. But in order to cool that radar, they put tons and tons of air conditioning. We were an experimental boat in a lot of ways, and they had all this air conditioning on there to cool this radar, and then they pulled that radar off, but they left the air conditioning. So here we were, a small ship, submarine with tons and tons of air conditioning, with no the radar to keep cool. We'd get underway and we'd like froze to death. We'd get under our fall weather jackets, which are a heavy lined jacket. We'd have our watch cap, which is a wool cap. We'd put that on to go on watch. I stood underway. I stood sonar watches, and that's part of my hearing problem today is listening to the radar too many years or sonar. But then we got underway, and in the first long operation, like it froze to death. And I got back into home port and Pearl, Hawaii, and broke open the Sears catalog and ordered some long johns and a sleeping bag. And you ought to heard the people laugh when I brought them down on board the boat before we got underway for our next run. Because, what are you going to do with those, Doc? I said, you just hide and watch. We get underway and sealed up. That air conditioning started working and it got cold. So I'd slip on my long johns, unzip my sleeping bag and crawl in and had a nice warm bed. And then about a week later they were, hey Doc, can I rent your sleeping bag? Can I rent your long johns?
So did anybody else after that trip buy some?
Yeah, next time that they were going to get underway, there were several more that invested in sleeping bag and long johns.
How many days off from each? Did you have so many months before you went back out?
Yes, we were supposed to be, with the three of us, we were supposed to be, one of us would be underway for either Westpac or what they call a special operation. Westpac would be 6 months, and then we were supposed to be back in the States for 12 months. So every 18 months we'd be deployed to the Western Pacific. But for some reason, Barbell had all kind of problems and a lot of times was not able to meet her obligations or her commitments. And good old Bonefish would be selected to make the cruise, whether the captain was trying to make a name for himself or what. But, we were gone, I was on board 5 years and we were gone 4 summers out of 5. Either on Westpac or special operation. Say the longest I was gone was 55 days at one time. Then when we would snorkel at night, the snorkel pipe is a large cylinder pipe, and half of it is exhaust and half of it is fresh air intake. And it had electrodes on it, on the top of it, so in case salt water would hit those electrodes and it would automatically shut the head valve. Your head valve would stay open until those electrodes were clear of salt water, and then it would automatically open. Unless we reached 6 inches, the diesels would continue to run until they pulled a 12-inch vacuum in the boat, and then it would automatically pull the fuel injectors for your diesel and would shut the engines down after it pulled a 6-inch vacuum. But sometimes it'll only pull in maybe 4 or 5 inches of vacuum, and that head valve would open. So bam, there would go your eardrums. I mean, that vacuum would be pulling your eardrums out, and then all of a sudden, bam, you're right back to normal atmosphere. And oh, so you learned to sleep when they were snorkeling, or when you were down on the battery, and stay up when it was snorkeling, because you try and sleep through that. Usually you make a yawn procedure and you can get used to popping your ears that way. But if you're sound asleep and they pull a vacuum, there's no way you can. But you know immediately that what happened, because it'll wake you up in a hurry when they get about a 4 or 5 inch vacuum and then right back down to normal sleep pressure again.
Did you have sea rations back when you were on the submarine? Did you have sea rations, or did you have
No, we
actual
had Navy submariners are the best fed men in the Navy. We had most of the service craft have tin trays. We had China and silverware. Yeah, let's see. The only thing that you're limited on your long cruises to your fresh goods and your milk. Some of those from us from the Midwest really enjoyed our milk, and on the way, after about 3 or 4 days, that was the end of the milk, because majority you get a long cruise, or your refrigeration is transferred to freezer, so we could get more perishable meat, more frozen meat and frozen vegetables, and so as they would get underway and we'd convert the freezer or refrigerator space, they had a temperature control deal on them, and we'd convert what was normally a refrigerator into a freezer. So we'd have a double freezing space.
Did you have mail call?
When we got back into port, and he'd say you'd be underway for 40, 50 days, and you'd have a whole pile of mail waiting for it. Some of the men had the local newspaper there in Honolulu sent to the ship, and then they had to have all of those days of newspapers waiting for them.
But it'd be pretty lonely without anything those 55, 60 days.
Yeah.
Did you, when you were in Japan, you were stationed in Japan at a naval hospital?
Yeah.
And what did you do there?
I was in the optical unit there.
The optical.
Single division. That was during the Vietnam War, and we would get orders in from front lines, corpsman or the dispensary close to the rear, from the rear echelon would say somebody had lost their glasses or had them destroyed in one way or another. When they were up on the lines, they would come back and they would airmail their prescription, their lens prescription up to us at the hospital optical unit. And we had a working relationship with the officer of the day. If we got some of those glass orders in, and one of our men was on duty. He would be relieved of his hospital duties. He'd usually be in the receiving or something. We had 6-section watch. We'd be on every 6 days. We'd have to go up to we called it the front office or OD's desk. And if one of our men was up on that duty and we got a packaging or an airmail deal from the front lines, he would be relieved from his duties up there and he would go back and call in the other corpsmen, the opticians, and we'd all work around the clock sometimes, getting those orders back out and get it back down to forces online as fast as possible. I say we'd make up the new glasses, transport them to Air Force Base in at Sugi, which is about 20 miles away from Yokosuka, and they would fly them back down to the lines in Echelon in Vietnam. So we had about hopefully less than a 40-hour turnaround when we received them until they got their glasses back.
What did you like doing better? Did you like doing the optometry part, or did you like being on the submarine?
I liked submarine. I did 3 years in Pearl Harbor, optical unit there, and then 2 years on Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and then went aboard Bonefish and 5.5 years there, and really enjoyed it.
Do you remember when you retired? Do you remember the day you retired?
Yes, they have Navy has a retirement ceremony. The captain is the MC or the host for it, the captain of the ship. And the corpsman works directly under the executive officer, which is the second officer, right below the captain. You have the captain and the executive officer, and the corpsman works directly to the executive officer. And they were both, and all the officers and the men were in attendance, and the captain made the presentation, and then he turned it over to me, and I made about a half-hour speech that I composed, and after that, went around and had all the men lined up and was supposed to hold inspection on them. Went about 3 men down the line, looking them up and down, and looked up, and then one of the other shipmates was one that was going to be retiring for about the next 3 or 4 months after I got out. And I shook his hand and I said, "You're next." He says, "Yeah, Doc, I'll be next." And from then on, I shook everybody's hand all the way around and got back up to the podium. And the skipper turned to the executive officer and he says, "Do you have today's flag?" And the executive officer had it folded underneath the podium. And he said, "Yes, sir, here it is." And it was a ship. There was a flag that had flown on board ship that day. And it was presented to me. at that retirement ceremony. Quite a moving experience.
Very nice.
And then it ended by the other chief petty officers forming a line on either side, kind of a walkway type deal. And as I went by them, they all came to salute. And again, I had my flag tucked under my arm. It was quite an impressive, memorable event. Retirement ceremony, being saluted by your fellow chiefs.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
We had a reunion in Charleston, and about every 2 hours, somebody would say, "Are you ready?" We go 1, 2, 3, diesel boats forever. Everybody would yell it out because we were the last of the diesel powered submarines. Barbell, blue rock, and bonefish.
So, your 3 submarines were the last diesel-powered submarines. And so the bonefish is still in service?
No, bonefish was the first to go out. Unfortunately, she had a minor leak in the battery compartment, saltwater leak in the battery compartment. Anytime you mix salt water and hydrochloric acid in the battery wells, in the battery cells themselves, you mix and you immediately have explosive chlorine gas. And several of those, the batteries themselves are probably 12 to 18 inches square, and depending on if the bottom of the pressure hull is circular, and you take out your bulkheads, you square it off, and your ceiling and your floor or your deck, and then down below the deck in the battery or the midship compartment is where your battery wells are. You have your decking and then there's space that's still rounded. So you have various lengths of battery cells. Naturally, the ones in the center are longer, and then as your curvature comes up, they become shorter. And the salt water sprayed into the battery, and the top battery and it got into the battery acid, and they had, I believe, 2 explosions, and they tried to get into the battery eyeball, fight the fire, and they had more explosions, and it was the skipper's, I knew it had to be terrible, abandoned ship. So the abandoned ship, they were operating with destroyers off Charleston and local operation. And the abandoned ship and the destroyers that they'd been operating with saved the men who were in the water. Bonefish was the first one to be retired. The big girl. They towed her back into port, but she was too badly damaged from the water, from the fire and the explosions. She was too badly damaged to and she was 30 years old, and the indication that it further turned out they finally determined what caused the explosions, and being 30 years old, there was a likelihood of having more of those uh, pinhole spraying of the battery valve, so they decided to scrap her. They scrapped and sold her to Gillette, I believe, so she's somewhere, somebody using for razor blades, I guess. And barbell, they used for target practice off of San Diego, about 200 miles out of San Diego. They took the sail off, took the decking off, just more or less just left the old round pressure hull, filled her full, half full of cement, and then used her for target practice. And Blueback, I say, is the only one that survived. She's still afloat in Portland, Oregon.
Well, Milton, I would like to take at this time time to thank you for the time that you gave our country
Thank you.
in serving our country and the 20 years you gave to our country serving. And I would also like to thank you for the time that you've given me today and allowing me to interview you and hear your story. I appreciate it and I'm greatly honored.
Thank you.
Thank you.